Hello and welcome to our presentation today. I am Kimberly Wickert, Director of Organizational Partnerships from the University of Kentucky, HDI, and Retain Kentucky. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I am a middle-aged white female with shoulder-length blonde hair, glasses. Today I'm wearing a black shirt and have the Retain blue and white background. Thank you for joining us for Retain Kentucky's Employment Seminar Series, Return to Work Tools, Inclusive Job Descriptions. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The captioning feature is enabled, but you can disable so. We will also be monitoring the Q&A and chat box throughout the presentation. So we invite you to put any questions or comments that you have there so you can join in our discussion today. We will also be sending the slide deck out to everyone who attended today in the next few days. The information contained in this presentation or accompanying materials is intended for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the University of Kentucky, Human Development Institute, or its individual employees. Although we attempt to provide accessible, accurate, and current information, no guarantees are made to that effect. So mark your calendar for our next Employment Seminar Series presentation on September 21st at noon, when I will review our Retain Kentucky employer resources to promote an inclusive workforce. The registration link is in the chat box for your convenience. Let's look at our objectives today, and they are to learn key areas to be assessed in an inclusive job description, learn to promote recruitment and retention through inclusive job descriptions, and to hear Retain support to develop those inclusive job descriptions. Now, let's move to our next slide, where I'm excited to share a surprise presenter today. This is a first for our Employment Seminar Series, Dr. Nicholas Wright. Dr. Wright is HDI's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and he joined us a little over a month ago. And when Michelle and I were developing today's presentations, we wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you, Dr. Wright, and ask you to share your thoughts on how diversity, equity, and inclusion can begin with the job posting. Dr. Wright, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to HDI and the Employment Seminar Series. Can you tell us about your role and how DEI initiatives begin with job descriptions?
Yeah, so thank you all so much for inviting me to this. The moment that you told me about an inclusive job description presentation in a training webinar, I was eager to join because of how important that is and how close that is to the work that I do. So just so everyone knows, my name is Dr. Nicholas Wright. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. We know that diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are hot topics. Those are buzzwords at the moment, you know. But a lot of people say those words, but they don't quite understand what they mean and how they actually have to deal with the work that we do in the programs and everything that we have going on. Diversity is much more than just a buzzword, and it's much more than apparent diversity. It's more than just diversity that you can see with it, and that's noticeable. I think that its diversity is so in depth, and it has to deal with all the identities and the experiences that we hold. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we think about those three right there, it's not just buzzwords. It's something that has to be infused in everything that we do. That's what's important. Now, as we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we're thinking about these, diversity in the workplace matters because when we have interactions with individuals who are different from us or different from the identity that we hold, what it does is it increases our knowledge base. It increases what we know and increases what we're exposed to. Not only does it do that, but also diversity promotes creative thinking. And when we have the creative thinking, it allows us to view problems, issues, and everything like that in different perspectives. Because by having these different perspectives, by having all of these, we're able to find solutions that are more holistic, that are able to truly find ways that the problems can be resolved, not just for some people, but for everyone. Now, that's how it is with diversity, but we also have inclusion, and inclusion matters as well. Inclusion matters because it builds relationships. And in the communities that we have right now, or in our organizations, because when we're thinking about this, building community in our organizations, it enhances sense of belonging. And we know that sense of belonging relates to persistence. And we all know that we want people to have persistence, and it leads to longevity and fulfillment. And overall, it leads to productivity. So if we can build that community, we can have that sense of belonging, we can have better productivity. With diversity and inclusivity in here, in our organizations, it's something that makes the employees better overall, and which makes the company better, makes it more productive as a whole. Now, as we're thinking about inclusive job descriptions, it's important, and I'm sure that people are hearing this and they understand that it's important, but they may not understand why exactly it's important. And when we think about it, inclusive job descriptions, the reason why they're important, it's more inclusive, so it has a universal design to them, because that's how we can pull all the candidates in. Yes, we need to be specific to the skill set that we have at hand. We need to be specific of that, but we can also be thoughtful and inclusive in the language that we use and as we write these descriptions. Now, as I'm talking about this language, this means using language that's easy to understand. This means removing gender-coded words and also removing racial bias, just being more universal around this. And what it does in these job descriptions, as we are writing them, as we are being more inclusive, having an inclusive job description, it lays the groundwork for the workplace. This is people's first impression about your company. And by having this is what they know automatically, that it's inclusive. Having this groundwork, we're all working towards becoming more inclusive. Companies or campuses or departments or whatever it is, we're all working to be more inclusive. This is how we do it. When we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not only done through training, it's done in various things that we have going on. And by having an inclusive job description, what that does is it allows and it attracts qualified, diverse candidates to our pool of candidates. If we have that inclusive job description, if we have that there, what it does is it's the first introduction to company culture. We want to make sure that job descriptions introduce your company culture as being inclusive and understanding, because that's a great first impression that we have with people. And we know that that's going to pull in more candidates. So it's the first impression that people have. And let's introduce your company as an inclusive community, an inclusive climate that's there.
Thank you so much. That is great information. Thank you for laying the groundwork for our presentation today. And I hope you'll join us again soon in another Implement seminar series so we can learn more about DEI initiatives in the workplace. Our next presenter is Michelle Lauer. Michelle is the Senior Job Analyst at the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute, and she has extensive experience working with employers performing safety and ergonomic assessments and identifying essential functions of jobs to help individuals in their stay at work and return to work goals. Michelle supports individuals as well as employers by updating or developing functional job analyses that will allow healthcare providers to quickly understand the physical, mental, cognitive, and environmental aspects of a job and identify return to work options. She helps support the needs of individuals to successful employment in new or current jobs through identification of essential functions of a position and potential accommodations when needed. She also assists employers in developing transitional work options by identifying those transitional duty tasks for their return to work programs that will allow individuals an opportunity to work within their capacities and maintain a productive position while they recover. Man, you do a lot, Michelle. Prior to this role, you worked at the University of Kentucky as a return to work specialist with us at the Human Development Institute. And before that, you were an injury illness prevention specialist with the Office of Environmental Health and Safety. Just to give folks today a little more background about you, you began your career in occupational safety with Ford Motor Company in 2000 at the Los Angeles High Velocity Center and worked in a variety of roles while you were at Ford for 15 years in occupational safety, human resources, salaried and labor relations departments. During your tenure at the Sharonville transmission plant in Cincinnati, Ohio, you implemented an innovative return to work process and were responsible for recruitment and hiring of engineers, skilled trades, nurses, and plant management. And you also developed the Buddy program, where an experienced new hire mentor program was implemented and earned you a best practice award from the company. So, woo, that's a lot. You can relax now. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. You have some great innovative takeaways for us, so please take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I am Michelle Lauer. I am a mid-career white woman with brown hair, wearing a green shirt. I'm sitting in front of a blue background. And as we begin today, I would like you to think about, what is a job description? Is it what you are posting to hire an employee, or information you send to a medical professional in a return to work or stay at work situation? So today we are going to look behind the curtain and focus on the bones behind the job description and how to make it more inclusive through the job analysis process. And a job analysis is the process of gathering and analyzing information about the content and human requirements of a job and the context in which they are performed. There are three parts of the job analysis: the job description, the job specification, and job demands. The job description will include your title and summary, essential job functions, and environmental working conditions. The job specification is the education, skills, and certification. Currently, job demands tend to only include physical demands such as lifting, walking, grasping. But how do we expand beyond this and make it more inclusive and functional? So let's start by taking a look at the job analysis process. So this process is going to begin with speaking with the human resources representative and an interview with a supervisor to determine the essential functions of a position. Secondly, the work environment conditions and equipment used is reviewed, measured, and documented. Next, an employee completing a task is observed by the job analyst. And then lastly, the employee who was observed is interviewed for additional information and clarification. So then I take this information and turn it into a job analysis report. And this can be utilized by supervision or an HR professional to write a more inclusive job description by focusing on essential tasks and the environmental working conditions. It enables employers to more effectively recruit and select employees. Kimberly, would you like to talk about a recent job analysis we completed with a custodial group?
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to be with you just a few weeks ago when you were on site looking at essential functions of a custodial position. And it really was impactful to me because one of the things that we're seeing with the pandemic is that essential functions have changed, right? Social distancing, remote work, but supply chain is huge to job descriptions right now in essential functions. And one of the things that I don't think the employer even realized until you were on site was that one of their essential functions of lifting a 55-pound bag of salt to, spread in the wintertime to, on sidewalks to remove ice and snow had changed because of the supply chain demand. And they were they're now ordering 35-pound buckets. So that took that essential function from a heavy, physically demanding task down to a medium demand task, which really could open up opportunities for individuals who may not have met that criteria to be able to perform that heavy, physically demanding function. So there were a lot of light bulbs that went off for me watching you do that. Was that, you know, employers need to look at their essential functions on a regular basis, especially with the pandemic and the supply chain issues, and also how those things can open up options and be more inclusive for individuals who may not have been able to perform those essential functions in the past. So thanks for letting me ride along on that one and learn as you were doing that.
You are welcome. So let's start by reviewing essential functions. And essential functions are the core elements of any given position. And the EEOC defines it as the basic job duties that an employee must be able to perform with or without reasonable accommodation. These are job duties that must occur in order for the business unit or overall business to function successfully. While an employee may perform other duties as assigned, the essential functions of the job are those that would cause harm to the business or organization if they were not performed. In the stay at work or return to work process, it is beneficial to ensure the focus is on essential job functions. So it can often be tricky to know if a job function is essential. So let's take a look at these 4 factors when determining what is essential. So would this position exist if it did not perform this function? So essential functions are the reason for the position. These are not people specific, they're position specific. And without those functions, the position probably wouldn't be needed. For example, a payroll manager, their position exists to manage payroll. If the position no longer managed the payroll, we can safely assume the position would not exist. Are there other employees who perform this function? In some cases, there might only be one or a very limited number of positions that perform a specific duty, or there might be times when only one position can perform it. The fewer employees or positions that can perform that function, the likelier it is an essential function. For instance, answering a department's main phone line might or might not be essential to the position of administrative assistant, depending on if there are others who can do it or not. Is the function highly specialized, or does it require an employee to have a special skill, licensure, or certification to perform it? If the answer is yes, then it's more likely to have this as an essential function. For example, an in-house attorney needs legal licensure in order to perform contract review and sign-off, so this is an essential function. Likewise, someone who operates a forklift must have a license, and this function can't be performed by someone who does not have that license. How much time is spent performing the function, and how much weight does it carry? There are functions that might be performed only once a year, but are absolutely critical. That would likely be an essential function. The intersection of frequency and weight are an important determination. A finance officer audits the budget every 6 months to make sure the company is on track financially. Though this only happens twice a year, it is absolutely critical to the business, which makes it essential. Adding environmental working conditions is another way to make a job description more inclusive. These are a set of factors associated with the environment in which work is conducted. This can affect an employee's capacity to execute duties and tasks on the job. When it comes to lighting, someone who has seizures and the flashing lights may cause them. Someone with hearing loss may need an environment that has minimal noise. And extreme heat may affect someone's ability to work who has an illness such as MS. What about a bakery position and a person who may have a food allergy, such as peanuts? These are environmental working conditions are important, so the worker can make an informed decision in the recruitment process, and healthcare providers can also use this to assist workers in their stay at work, return to work goals. We have already touched on physical demands of a position. To make job demands more inclusive, we need to consider the psychological and cognitive demands. Psychological demands of a job will allow organizations to determine whether any aspect of a job might be a hazard to the worker's health and well-being. Is the work monotonous? Is there an excessive amount of work that will always carry over? Are there long periods of concentration? Is the work strenuous? Will it weigh on your mental health, such as a person who works in a chicken processing plant or a counselor? Cognitive demands include the ability to learn, process, and apply knowledge, skills associated with perception, memory, and judgment. Someone who has had a brain injury, this may affect their memory and their executive functioning or their communications. So these are all things to be considered. When it comes to recruitment, a well-written job description is one that speaks to a diverse applicant while being specific about the skill set required. The word required, these are our essential job functions. Are the requirements the manager wants to list actually indispensable to getting the job done? Are they essential functions of the position? If not, I suggest listing them in a separate category as preferred, or just doing away with them at all. You may ask why. Because with every new requirement, you eliminate one more reason qualified, underrepresented talent would self-select out. You've probably heard of the Hewlett-Packard study, which found that women typically only apply for jobs where they meet 100% of the requirements for the role, while men, on the other hand, will typically apply if they only meet 60% of them. By having a job analysis performed, the human resources personnel can clarify the role's needs, as well as define employer expectations, essentially giving you everything you need for the job description. So let's look at a few examples of language in posted job advertisements and how to update it to more inclusive language. So our first one here, hackers. This actually came from that Hewlett-Packard where they were looking for digital hackers. And the word hackers some people feel it has a negative connotation. It's also listed as more of a male-dominated word. Once they changed their word to developer from hackers, they saw a larger pool of people applying. Digital native. Instead of asking for someone who has grown up using the internet, ask for the skills you're looking for. Technology skills or knowledge in social media. Must be able to lift up to 50 pounds, moves equipment up to 50 pounds. Talks to students, communicates with students. We have multiple ways now that we can use a technology to communicate with each other. Walking through the building, moves through the building. Must be able to stand throughout the workday, must be able to maintain a stationary position. So now we're going to have a little fun. And the next two slides, I'm going to have examples of some job advertisements. And I'd like you to look for any words that you feel could be made more inclusive. And when you see the words, you can just put them in the chat box here. So our first one is a desktop administrator. Provide hands-on support to the organization's end users relating to laptops, desktops, and mobile devices. Anyone see any words in here potentially we could change? What about the word hands-on? Instead of saying hands-on, we say provide direct support. And down there, there's another line. We are one of the good guys. This phrase is unnecessary and could give someone the impression that the workforce is mainly male. So let's look at another one. Physical requirements sitting down for long periods of time, typing and viewing a computer. Yes, sitting down for long periods of time. How about maintaining a constant position for a long period of time? And now we have sit to stand work items we could place on our desk or movable desks. Typing, that could be changed to data entry. Even Microsoft Office now has speech to text capabilities built inside.
One of the responses that you got was from Stephanie Brown. She said use stationary, and it looks like the chat may be disabled. So I'm going to see if
Oh.
Brandon can maybe enable the chat, but in the interim, go ahead and put your information in the Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Kimberly.
Sure.
So moving on, under the law, employers generally cannot ask disability-related questions or require medical examinations until after an applicant has been given a conditional job offer. This is because in the past, the information was frequently used to exclude applicants with disabilities before their ability to perform a job was evaluated. So by using a job analysis report of the position, you can send that to your candidate that you gave a conditional job offer to. And that gives them the opportunity to review it and ask for any specific accommodation they may need. And if they do request an accommodation, that gives the employer time to review the request and see if it is reasonable. The employer may not ask any questions about the nature or severity of the disability pre-offer. However, after making a conditional job offer, an employer may ask any disability-related question or require medical examination, as long as all individuals selected for the same job are asked the same questions or made to take the same examination. When it comes to return to work or stay at work, temporary mental or physical capabilities may prevent your employee from returning to their regular job after an injury or illness. However, it may be possible for them to return to work in a different capacity in a productive position while still recovering, such as transitional duties. Research shows the sooner an employee returns to work, the more likely they preserve future income and health. Studies show if an employee does not return to work within 12 months, the likelihood of them returning to work or successfully return to work more than 6 months reduces dramatically. Healthcare providers will need to know what essential functions are and the demands of those functions. This is where the job analysis report will be beneficial. It will have the listing of job demands in relation to each essential function and how often it is encountered when completing the essential function. So we're going to take a quick look at one. And this is one from that cost data group we do. We have our essential function on the left of cleaning restrooms and our essential tasks in the middle. And as you see here, we have remove trash. It says less than 35 pounds. Sweep and mop floors towards the bottom, less than 28 pounds. And then we have all of our equipment used on the right. So the job demand portion of the job analysis can be provided to a treating physician, an occupational therapist, physical therapist, or any other medical professional. Often when medical professionals inquire about essential job functions, there are differences in description, especially when there isn't any documentation. One person may focus on the most strenuous task, and another may focus on the easiest task. When this occurs, neither description may be accurate. So we have this zoomed in section of the job demand summary, and we can see what the person's essential functions are. And right here on the top second row says restrooms and all the lift and carry demands below. The medical professional can use this report to determine if it's appropriate for the employee to be able to return to work based upon their capabilities. This is also the case when we're looking at modified or alternative work, where a medical professional may spell out some of the work capabilities. Perhaps they're not detailed enough that the parties feel comfortable returning that worker to work. In these cases, a job analysis is very useful. So to be inclusive, we need to evaluate more than just those physical capabilities. We need to include those cognitive and psychological demands. For example, a first responder may have a high level of psychological stressors in their role. Cognitive demands on the job for someone who is dealing with brain fog from COVID is necessary to know and assist them in identifying accommodations in their state of work, return to work. And here we are out in the field using a diameter push-pull force gauge. It's on the left picture in my hand. And we were using this to measure the push-pull force of this MIG welding machine. It is on wheels and weighs over 100 pounds, but only took 25 pounds of force to push or pull. And the photo on the right is using an industrial scale to measure a bucket of water that somebody was lifting or dropping out to dump the water. By filling that bucket on the cart already, that avoided that person having to lift that filled bucket. And this illustrates the difference between moving and lifting, and may include a larger pool of qualified candidates for your recruitment strategies.